what a historic night. Not since 1928 have Republicans held the White House, the Senate, and the House.
It's just been an incredible night. It started out, 6-7 hours ago. It looked very, very good by all the polling indicators. And here we are. Donald Trump has been elected the 45th president of the United States. We've got a great panel. Yeah, here, J. Hogan Gidley. I said the J because you're ecstatic right now.
Ecstatic, I don't know.
He's a Republican strategist. Leslie Sanchez is joining us. She's been up all night as well. And Liz Smith is Democratic strategist. Guys, I don't think Rita and I have to do a whole lot of talking. We want to hear from you. What do you think about this? Let me start with the Republicans. Hogan.
I mean, I can just feel America getting great again right now as we speak.
I want to ask you, though, when did the Trump campaign, what was the mood inside this afternoon? When did they know it turned for them?
So I went over there and spent the better part of the evening. I arrived around 8 o'clock, was there for about 4.5, 5 hours before we actually came on air when it became one more state to go, and I actually left the party. It was one of those deals where everyone was buzzing and excited because it was a party. They weren't really focused on the actual results. They just felt as though we're here, we gave it our best shot, let's just enjoy our time in New York and we'll call it a day. And the media, they were doing their due diligence, typing. I was in the media part, but I also wandered around and talked to some folks on the ground as well. And what happened was he began to pick up states that were in question, that were strong Hillary leans, that we'd heard all day that she was going to win Florida, that she was going to win or compete in Georgia, she was going to win North Carolina for sure. You started to see a shift in the room. People started paying attention to the big board. People started moving into the actual hall itself to watch the television sets. You saw journalists begin to type feverishly as opposed to just sitting around relaxing, paying attention to the ambiance and the mood in the room, because then it all of a sudden got real. And you could tell that the people in the room started to smell victory. And when they called, they were one of the few places that called Wisconsin early. When they did, and he was about 16 short, 254, that's when the room was just electric. It was buzzing. They were waiting, anticipating, waiting for that next state, because Michigan at that point would have given them 270 on the nose. They could smell victory. You could see the juxtaposition of the Hillary campaign shots from their hall, which they chose because it had a glass ceiling. They wanted to kind of show that as symbolism that she would win and break that proverbial glass ceiling. And you could see it starting to get really, really hot in the room. People were excited, and the mood completely changed once he started picking up stage.
Check this out, Leslie. This is what people are calling the 3 pillars of Donald Trump's victory. Folks who said that the country was on the wrong track, people who were looking for change, and white men. Break that down for us.
Well, sure. Historically, we would come back. It's really hard because it was hard to believe Donald Trump could ever be president, right? That was kind of like the ongoing thing here. Unless you were a true Trump supporter, even establishment Republicans were having a hard time getting there because of all the faults of both these candidates. But anytime historically that you have, the compound election, as you know, 2 back-to-back Democratic presidents, of course, the natural, history would tell you that the next one would be Republican. It's an extremely hard thing to change, but because of all of the gaffes and kind of the personality and the traits and the flawed candidate that we had under Trump, we thought there was an opportunity. The second indicator, wrong track, right track, anything over 60% really means that the public wants to turn. They want to change and give the benefit of the doubt to the opposite party. And then again, we talk about white men, just the white vote in general. That's that area that's been, we say it over and over again, disaffected. It's really the farming towns, the rural communities, that Rust Belt area that feels they were left behind. They didn't have a voice in the Republican Party or the Democratic one. And the line you would always hear is those 2 parties are so blended together, they forgot about us. We now want a choice, not an echo. And that distinction is really when you start to see a populist movement rise.
Liz, our Major Garrett and Nancy Cordes were reporting that Hillary Clinton did call Donald Trump. He even said that in his speech just a short time ago. Why didn't she concede tonight?
So not only did Donald Trump's victory shock the world, the country, some Republicans, it shocked the Clinton campaign and the Democratic Party. And, this is the most a shocking result, I think we can say, in modern political history in any of our lifetimes. And it makes sense for her kind of to hit the pause button and think about what she's going to say tomorrow, given the very divisive nature of the primary, a lot of the heated rhetoric, and think about the things that she was saying toward the end of the campaign, that this is a guy you couldn't trust with the nuclear codes. This is a guy who, wants to kick out all the immigrants, and frankly, I agree with those things, but she needs to then figure out how is she going to square that rhetoric that she was using, pre this result with what she says in accepting, her defeat.
But here's the thing, Hogan, even Politico's reporting that even the RNC model showed Trump losing.
Yeah.
Is that true?
From what I understand it is. I don't have anybody necessarily that I was pinging tonight to check that, but I was hearing some buzz in the room from some of my friends who are close to the situation, who made the comment that they thought it was going to be an early called night. I mean, typically we see these things end around 11 p.m. But there was a stat I heard when I was in the room that was fascinating to me, and it said half of all Americans today earn less money than they did 17 years ago. So this anger and vitriol that I think the RNC and the DNC to a large degree either refused to acknowledge or chose to ignore bit them both, because the Americans who feel left behind, it's 17 years. That's a Bush deal, too.
Sure.
It's not just an Obama rejection. And a large portion of the country, and this is something Huckabee said on the trail, which take it or leave it, but it was a very interesting thing, and it was, how come things never change? And he equated Washington to a strip club. And he said, because the people who are putting down the money, the politicians do the dance for those people. It doesn't matter who's in power. Why do the Republicans in Congress, when they're minority, vote with Obama less than when they vote with Obama when they're in the majority? Because they're getting paid to do so. And I think a lot of Americans felt, as Leslie pointed out correctly, they were left behind. And they've been left behind for a long time now, and this is the culmination of that anger.
Liz, you wanted to add?
Yeah, well, just one thing I would say here is that we cannot attribute his success just to economic anxiety. There is a lot of anxiety out there about the changing demographics in this country.
Van Jones on CNN, he's a former Clinton operative. He's a Democratic strategist. He called this a white lash. What does that mean?
Well, and that's fascinating. I had seen something on Twitter about that, but I haven't seen the full exchange. The first sense that I got that things were changing were when I got panic calls about Virginia and Virginia looking so close. I was actually talking to a Republican operative, a very smart one in Virginia, and he was saying that the rural and exurban white turnout just exploded today in a way that they never anticipated. And what we're seeing, if you look at states like Wisconsin, even Minnesota, where Hillary Clinton is up, you see blue urban areas, little suburban blue rings, and then just seas of red. And so, it does speak to the fact that there were very stark racial divisions in this race. I do believe that there is a lot of anxiety in this country about changing demographics, and Donald Trump played to those fears.
One thing tonight, when Donald Trump came out, he gave a particular tone that people were kind of surprised with. We've got a soundbite from his speech tonight. Let's listen to that.
I've just received a call from Secretary Clinton. She congratulated us, it's about us, on our victory. And I congratulated her and her family on a very, very hard-fought campaign. I mean, she fought very hard. Hillary has worked very long and very hard over a long period of time, and we owe her a major debt of gratitude for her service to our country. I mean that very sincerely. Now it's time for America to bind the wounds of division, have to get together. To all Republicans and Democrats and independents across this nation, I say it is time for us to come together as one united people. It's time. I pledge to every citizen of our land that I will be president for all Americans, and this is so important to me. For those who have chosen not to support me in the past, of which there were a few people, I'm reaching out to you for your guidance and your help so that we can work together and unify our great country.
Kinder, gentler, unifying Donald Trump. Leslie, what'd you make of that?
Very, very humbled. Probably a little bit of shock that this actually happened within the campaign. I think it surprised and stunned everyone. But I think there's a really important theme here, and I think the narrative we have to get right. And there will be a lot of discussion about this, but especially as it comes to race. And it reminds me of a quote from Ronald Reagan where he said, "I didn't leave the Democratic Party, the party left me." And there are many people that felt the Democratic Party left them. And that's all these areas, we're talking about rural farmers. Texas, until the 70s, was for 100 years was a Democratic state, and that they felt that they weren't getting their solutions that they wanted. People start shopping for different types of parties. And the thing that's interesting about this is it's still too hard to tell, but it looks like Donald Trump performed at about average, if not above, where Mitt Romney was, for example, with the Hispanic community. So it's really hard to make a case that, oh my gosh, it was just a, kind of one ethnic group. No, it was women. It was people in suburban areas, rural areas, small cities. What it wasn't were large municipalities. The large cities overwhelmingly are part of that Democratic machine, and they went and worked for Hillary Clinton. They just did not perform at the level that they did for Barack Obama. They weren't incentivized. It wasn't their year. Everybody had, for all the reasons we talk about.
All right, so a couple of things. One, we can now confirm that the Clinton officials, Clinton camp, has says that she will be speaking tomorrow. We're still waiting for details on that. We're guessing it's probably some type of a concession speech, but they haven't given any details on that. The other thing, though, Leslie, and this is a question, I think, for Leslie and Hogan, there's a sense right now that Republicans are going to talk about this victory of Donald Trump's purely in economic terms. In other words, they're going to say, well, this is a repudiation of Obamacare. This is a repudiation of an economy that has left behind some of those folks in the Midwest and some of the folks in some of the blue-collar areas around the country. But I do wonder if there needs to be a viewing of this election also through the prism of race and the fact that Latinos did not come through in the ways that perhaps the Democrats expected them to come through.
I think they did what they've done for the last 10 presidential election cycles. He earned about 29%. The average is about 31. It's still too early. I think we need to let some of those numbers see. The reason I say that about numbers, all the numbers were wrong. All the exit polls were wrong. The polls were wrong. Our system of counting was wrong. This is the largest seismic political shift in modern history and in our lifetime. And it's global in context. If you think about Brexit, this is a massive movement where there is this idea of an elitist media establishment political class that is not listening to everyone else.
But, okay, I think there are a few things here. Is that Donald Trump is only up on this stage today. He was only in this position because of his role in the birther movement. And that really is what helped him rise up in the Republican Party. What helped him succeed in the Republican primary was, his anti-immigrant rhetoric, build a wall, close our borders, and, his Muslim ban. That was really what helped him take off. And, that's just a reality. And he played to, I think, a lot of people's fears on that, a lot of people's anxieties about changing demographics. And it's not dissimilar from some of the dynamics we've seen in Europe with the rise of, and I hate to drop this word, but with the rise of neo-fascism, where you've seen political parties there prey on the same anxieties by, appealing to Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, anti-immigrant sentiments. And it's something we should be conscious of. If we want to talk about Brexit, then let's also talk about the rise of neo-fascism in Europe and what caused it and the rhetoric.
I'm going to let you jump in on that, Hogan. But to your point, Liz, the former leader of the National Front of France, which is an extreme ultra-fascist organization, has tweeted his congratulations to Donald Trump, saying, the United States today, France tomorrow. We're starting to see that. We also know, according to Reuters, that Vladimir Putin has congratulated President-elect Trump as well. So that's not to equate the National Front with Putin, but I'm just saying that that's something that a lot of people are going to be looking at, Hogan.
Right. Look, every every exit poll we saw put the economy as the #1 issue, okay? I think Republicans are going to try and seize on that for various reasons because that is the #1 issue. But to try and say that's the only thing that propelled Donald Trump to a victory would be incorrect. And it would be a misreading by the Republican Party of what's going on in this country. Now, the economic aspect of Obamacare is important. The economic aspect of millions of people in this country who are depressing wages, who are here illegally, is economic. But there's also a right-wrong issue that for whatever reason, and Bernie Sanders touched on this, whatever reason, the people in power don't face the same music that the rest of us face. And so it is economic, but it is also Syrian refugee relocation. It is Obamacare. It is porous borders. And remember, other than the economy, it was safety. It was terrorism. And now we have terrorist attacks in the United States, the most we've seen in history. Those all play a part in what is going on in this country. And so to make it all about the economy, while some of these things do have economic aspects, that's true. But I hope the Republican Party sees exactly what's going on here, because having been on this campaign trail now for the better part of 2 years, at least, through Iowa, South Carolina, and other states that I visited, you can't underestimate or undervalue the dissatisfaction that Republicans and Democrats have with the government.
Yeah.
They feel as though it has let them down for various reasons. Remember now, Bernie Sanders, 47% feel like the government let them down. So they have their own, the Democrats have their own autopsy to perform here. But regardless, to use it all under the umbrella of the economy is probably a mistake.
Leslie, how big of a blow was tonight to President Obama and his legacy?
It's too soon to tell because I do think there's some historical factors and waves, like ebbs and flows of campaigns. I talk about in 1964, after this massive defeat, there were no less than 5 books written about the extinction of the Republican Party. And 2 years later, we won 47 seats. And 2 years later after that, we won the White House. So these things kind of happen. And it's actually for the Democratic Party, I think, very much because we're usually on the losing end. We have not had a majority win that looked anything like this go back to 1984. I mean, and just really, this is so strange and different in terms of its makeup, but it can allow for that cleansing that needs to happen. And some of these corruption issues that they're talking about related to the DNC, there's going to be a big call to start cleaning house, and very much what we're talking about doing on the Republican side. The Republicans are not immune from that. It's all part of the whole party system and shaking out, hopefully, some of these things are not working and finding a system that does work.